yeah, it's okay. Cool. Hi. How's it going? So I'm sorry, but this talk is not about Drupal. Not even a little bit. Maybe a very little bit. This is Jacob Singh's my Twitter handle if you want to tweet or otherwise get in touch with me later. It's actually, this is the number one question that I get asked living in India. I lived in India about 7 years, right? 7 or 8 years over the last 12. So I meet a lot of people, I've met a lot of people, and pretty much by far, this is the number one question. Which country are you? Right? Where from you? Which your village? That? Where from you? Oftentimes by guys like this. And so that's like definitely, in fact, just yesterday, I was in Delhi, and I was walking around central Delhi with my daughter, and I was asked this question 5 times in various ways. And now I say Noida. I say, nay, but like basically where are you from? Noida. Nahi sir, mane आपकी home country किधर है? Home country कहाँ से हो? Noida. ठीक है. That's number one. I play guitar, as some of you know, and I'm often seen with a guitar or ukulele or something like that. And so the second question, which is not really a question at all, but more of an order, is Hotel California, which is yet to be responded to in the affirmative. I don't know how to play the song, but a lot of people seem interested in having me play the song. But the third one, which is almost without fail, is you are a student. Where study you? And this still happens. This happened yesterday also. It happens regularly. And it was cute when I was, when I was like 22, 25 years old. Then I would say like, okay, actually I didn't go to school, and I could say, oh, I've been working since I was 16 and all this, and people would say, oh, they didn't really care. A bit older, then I'd say, okay, I'm married and I have a kid and everything. Now I'm 33 years old, so I'm just wondering, like, do you not see gray hair? Do you not see wrinkles? Do you not see my attitude, my back? I don't know what it is, but somehow people still think that I'm a student. And that's fine. Now I've started to like it. Looking young is nice, personally. Professionally, it's challenging, right? Because nobody really can take you seriously when they think you're just learning to shave. But, that's always been the way it is. And, I don't know, when I was preparing for this talk and thinking what to say, I was thinking, what do I have to contribute? What could I say? I don't know where really it's been 16 years. So I was thinking about it, and I said, well, I have 16 years of work experience in this field. And I stopped myself, and I said, whoa, that's scary. That's a long time. What do I have to show for it? What have I learned? Do I know anything yet? And I think a lot of times, I'm not sure I know very much. I would say that my straw is a little bigger. And what I mean by that is, when you're starting out at something, it's sort of like you're trying to climb a mountain, and you're trying to look through a straw while you climb the mountain. So your view is very focused on just that what you know. And that can be a great thing, because if all you see is this straw, you just run straight forward off of cliffs, down into rivers, and you find new places. You find new things. That's the genius of youth. I'd say as I've gotten older and worked more in this field, your straw sort of widens. You start to see patterns. You learn how to learn. You learn some things around what works and what doesn't. And when I was asked to give this talk, I was told that, in Pune, it's going to be a lot of students. Like, you might have a couple hundred students there, and only, a few people who know Drupal. So I thought, maybe if you'll humor a not quite old and not quite young guy for half an hour, give a little bit of gyan around what I think makes a successful tech career. Because most of you are students. I think, how many of you are students? It's less than I thought. Oh, several. Okay. And you're all computer science students? Yeah. Okay. So I don't know if it's. So this is not about Drupal. This is a gyan-focused talk. So I'm sorry for the rest of you. It's not the kind of talk I usually give, but I am going to drop some. But I'm mostly just going to tell stories, and I'm going to tell you 5 stories. And it all starts with C, because I have to have a theme. So curiosity, confidence, creativity, community, and caution. 5 stories, 40 minutes, around what I think may broaden your straw a little bit. So first, start with his curiosity. When I was 18 years old, I was putting myself through college part-time in the evenings. I was living with my mom and a caretaker for her, and I was working. It was a pretty stressful life, and I was temping. Does anybody here know what temping is? Nobody? No one's ever heard of temping? No? Temping is it's like a temporary worker. So essentially it's like, you go to an agency and you tell them what you can do, and then if they have a job for you, they call you. And you go in, it's like James Bond, like Secret Service, they call you up and say, we need to deploy the asset, to whatever place. It's just like that, except for there's no money, there's no booze, there's no women. The work is boring, there's no guns, and the money's bad. So $10 an hour, and I was doing secretarial work. I was at this prep school called Northville Mount Hermon. It's a small elite private school in Massachusetts. It's around $40,000 a year. Former presidents have gone there and all that stuff. And I was working in the Office of Planned Giving. And my assignment was to go through the X-Files. The X-Files were several binders that documented every piece of communication that the director had had in the last 10 years. Every phone call, every email, every letter he sent, solicitation, anniversary card, it was all there, photocopied every single thing and put in this X-Files. And my job, my exciting James Bond job, was to go through each page of this and enter it into a really lousy COBOL terminal application, which I had to put in the notes. DM called so-and-so on such and such a day, blah, 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 like that. And I had to drive 45 minutes to work and 45 minutes back in the snow for like half the year, because it's Massachusetts, and I had to wear a tie every day. That was my life. I didn't go to college. I didn't do a computer science degree. That's what I did. So starting in the job, about a month in, I was bored to tears doing this all day. And I found out about an Access database. You guys know Access? Is that still a thing people use? Yeah, I don't know. It's a database, whatever. So they're building a new database that's not like this, but one that looks more like things you've seen now. And I didn't really know what it was, but I knew I wanted to find out what it was. And so I got into my boss's computer. It was his kid's name was the password. And when he was at lunch, I went there and I looked through the internet and I found this thing and I made copies of it and I brought it to my machine and I started hacking around with it. And I was like careful. I'd keep my one eye like this when he walked through the door. Alt tab really quick, go back to this thing. and I learned how to run queries on it. So it had a lot of the same data. So the reports I had to build, I started building them from Access. And I learned about SQL. I learned about VBA. I was writing scripts. I was building applications. I even made reports to track my progress. So I track how many X files I'd go through every day. I made databases for that. And I wrote macros. And these macros allowed me to enter in the data way faster, probably about 60% faster than I was doing it before. So I had a 6-month assignment. And in about 3 months, I had completed the entire thing. Plus, I had built a reporting screen for the boss and everything, and I demonstrated for him, and he was happy, and he forgave me for hacking into his computer. And I started asking around different departments. Started saying, hey, you guys got any work for me? I'm done with this. You got any work for me? When the big boss found out, the head of the whole building or whatever, I was immediately terminated because I had finished my assignment. They were paying me $10 an hour to enter the X files into the computer, and I had completed the assignment, so my position was terminated, and I was unemployed. But a year later, I had my own company. I was charging $65 an hour, and I had 2 people working for me. Now, there's always an easy way to do something. There's always an easy way to just get the job done the way it's been asked, that someone's told you to get it done. And it's really, and you can bill 3 hours for a 1-hour job and get away with it most of the time. And this is endemic in the IT industry, especially in India. There's a lot of that going on. And I encourage you to stay the hell away from it. If you see anyone behaving like that, don't associate with them. Treat them like they're a drug addict or something like that. You shouldn't associate with such people. They will ruin your career. Always be curious. Always be looking for a better way to do something. And don't worry about the immediate consequences of it. Efficiency is always rewarded in the end. So that's that one. Second story. It's funny, I was up here 20 minutes ago, and Praful said, Prabhupada was saying something about people talking to me during the day, and I said, it gets to be too much for me. I'm shy by nature. He's like, what? No way, man, you're not shy by nature. And in some ways I am. In some ways this is something I've trained myself to do. I've done this a lot. You get better at it. So continuing my story a little bit, and I promise I won't only tell my life story. After that NMH episode, I was living in a little cabin up in Wendell, Massachusetts. It looked nothing like this cabin. This is stock art. It was actually like really shitty looking, like, cheap walls and dirty looking and everything, but whatever. It was in the middle of nowhere. And I had a little 56.6K modem and a free internet service. And I was just sitting up there and hacking away. I was living with a couple family friends and their 1-year-old son I took care of. And at some point, the mom, she wanted a scale. So she did a lot of cooking projects. She baked cakes and things like that, and she wanted a kitchen scale to weigh ingredients. And so I said, okay, where are we going to find that in the middle of nowhere? And I said, well, I can look online. So I fired up my web browser, and I opened up Web Crawler and Alta Vista and Dogpile. And remember, this is 1999 or something, pre-Google. And I found a site, which was balances.com. It was hideously ugly. This is balances.com from 1999. Even among ugly sites of the day, it was considered ugly. And this is one of the better pages. Blink tags and things flying everywhere and 5,000 HTML pages, all looking different. And I found this scale that was going to work. And so I went to go check out. I clicked the Buy Now button. Back then, for all you youngins, your e-commerce site had to have a Buy Now button. And it had to be flashing and beveled and pink sparkles coming out of it. And that would increase conversion rates, is what they believed. So I clicked the Buy Now button, and then of course, you don't actually buy now because it takes like 20 more steps. But I go to the shopping cart, and I fill out all my data and all this, and it's broken, it craps out. I do it again, did it 4 times. So then I called the number at the top of the screen, which is really how e-commerce worked in 1999. The shopping cart broke, then you called the number, typically. So I called the guy up, and I said, you have the best price, but your website is really ugly and it's broken. And he says, I know, I need somebody to fix it for me. He's from Boston. I said, I can do it. No, I didn't even know how websites were made. I didn't know HTML. I'd never really programmed. I just for some reason it occurred to me to say that I could do it. And he asked me, he's like, oh, kid, I don't know. You don't know anything about nothing. Who the hell? You don't know anything about nothing. I was like, well, don't pay me if it's not good. He said, okay, I'll pay you $8 an hour. Make this banner ad. $8 an hour. So I had to make a banner advertisement. I pirated Fireworks. It took me about 2 days of downloading. I got Fireworks on my machine. Fireworks, for those who don't know, it's like a Photoshop kind of application. And I started making this banner advertisement. It took me 12 hours. I stayed up all night to make this one, and it was ugly as hell. It was just terrible. And I only billed him for 1 hour. Billed him for $8. And but look at the standards, right? So it was okay. He accepted the work. And then after that, I convinced him that to give me other work, and so I started building HTML pages. And after that, I started building some Flash stuff. And then I thought, this is ridiculous. You have 20,000 pages. I've heard about this cool thing called PHP. Maybe we should check that out in MySQL. 6 months later, I had rebuilt the site. It's not pretty, but that was his choice. But it's data-driven, PHP, MySQL. I was managing 2 Linux servers. I could compile PHP, MySQL from scratch. I was working on Python and Zope. If you guys know Zope and Plone, those old systems. I had written animations in Flash with data-driven components, with XML, all this in 6 months. I didn't have a computer science degree, I didn't know anything about anything. And this is what I had later. Now, I like this story because it makes me sound like I'm smart. I did this thing, and then 6 months later, I'd done all this cool stuff, and I was a real web developer. I didn't go to college for it or anything. My code was terrible. It was just, I've seen it recently. This site is still up, by the way. You can go see it. It's still active. And it's awful. My server had tons of security holes in it, and it had a bunch of pirated software and videos and pictures I liked and stuff. Whatever. I was terrible at what I did. My designs were so bad that I would have been fired making Indian political posters. I mean, I was terrible. But the point is, I was able to, I was able to create a connection and persuade him. And when I say this, I say sales is the universal skill. There's no other skill which is required in every single field that I can think of. When I say sales, I don't mean, like now I have a job which is sales. So a lot of my job is going and talking to customers and telling them about Drupal, telling them about Acquia, influencing them. But sales, when I say sales, I mean in every part of your life. So there was one piece of it which I had the confidence to say, hey, I can do this, which is a little unethical. It's actually a misrepresentation of skills. But throughout the process, I had to sell him on the idea that CSS was the future, that PHP was the future, that Linux was good, that we should get a new server, that we should put our database on a new server. Every one of those things was about me influencing him and going in a different direction. And so when I talk about sales, what I mean is listen for a problem, articulate how you want to solve it, right? Have the confidence to present that to somebody, and then create a relationship with that person so that you can make it happen. That's where I'd say about confidence. So there's that story. Let me take a drink of water. By the way, that guy still calls me up, Gary, the scales guy. And funny thing about him, he's from Peabody. Peabody's like North Shore, Boston, and he's Armenian. And he's really bald, and he's Armenian. And he said he was in the Armenian mafia before. His family's all mafia, and but he has a strange language he speaks. So I'd send him something, and he liked it. He'd say, "That looks tit." It looks like it's the balls. That's how they talk, apparently. I don't know what it means. I still don't know. But I was on the phone with him one time, and I heard him shoot a squirrel off of his porch with a 22. I was just having a conversation. I was talking to him about servers and memory. All of a sudden, a weird guy. You gotta start somewhere. Okay, creativity. Who has a side project here? That's shameful. Today you can raise like 3 hands. Today's got an empire of side projects. But yeah, always have a side project. And here's why. Well, I'll tell you a story first. So there's this good friend of mine. He's about my age. And while I was doing all this stuff and hustling and scraping and making something happen, he was going the traditional route. He was going to school. He was getting a PhD. He was in school for a long time. And while he was in his PhD program, he and, or his master's, I think, he and a couple of his friends, they decided that, they were all nerds, right? And they were sharing an internet connection with one another, and they wanted to have a way to talk to each other and to leave notices and to talk about their assignments and to communicate about their school and where to go eat and where the parties are and whatever. And so PHP was the hot thing back then. And so they decided to create their own little forum software, okay? So they built this thing, and they used it. And once the school year ended and they were all graduating, they said, hey, we should stay in touch. Because back then it was running on their local network in their dorm. So they said, okay, we should put this up online on the internet, and then we can keep using it. We'll go our own directions, but we'll keep talking to one another. And so they went to register a domain name. My friend is Dutch. And so he looked for the Dutch word for village. The Dutch word for village is dorp. And so he said, okay, it's like a village. I'm going to call it dorp.org. But he was drinking a little bit that night and probably a little tired. So he switched the R and the O. So it became drop.org. And so he put the site up online. And he was like, it's $10. I don't want to spend it again. Whatever. I'll just put it up. It's drop.org. That's fine. They used that for a while, for a year. It wasn't a big deal. They went and got their own jobs, did other stuff. It remained a side project. Year and a half, 2 years later, they said, let's open source this. They were all into open source, and there was like, maybe other people would want to use this. Some other people at their college just started using it. They said, okay, let's open source it. What do we call it? And they said, well, I don't want to call it drop. And so they said, okay, well, what's the Dutch translation for drop, right? We already went the other way. Let's do a Dutch translation for drop. The Dutch translation for drop, of course, is Drupal. This is drop.org, the original one from back then. And the man, of course, my friend, is Dries Boettart, who's the founder of Drupal and the founder of Acquia. So So think about this. This is 2000. He and his buddies at college decided to build a little forum software, right? Drupal didn't become what it is now back then. Dries worked at different startups. He had other side projects he did. You know, he got his degree. This sat for a long time. He did little improvements here and there. People got interested in it. It's been 14 years since this thing started. And it started out as a side project. And now, he's the head of Acquia, the company I work for. This is old now. It's a $100 million company. We have about 450 employees. It's the fastest growing software company in the United States for the last 4 or 5 years. But let's go back and revisit that. Timeline of Drupal. 2001, nobody cares. 2002, nobody cares. 2003, nobody cares. 2004, a few nerds care. A few, like half a dozen. Okay. 2004, still. 2005, a few more nerds care. They have a little conference, about 40 of them in Brussels. 2006, a few NGOs start to care. 2007, we start to see a few some businesses care about it. 2008, Dries quits his job. And 2009, Acquia is formed. In 2015, maybe an Acquia IPO. Why I bring this up is, okay, so I lied. There is something in this talk about Drupal. But it's not really about Drupal. Your side project will probably not end up like Dries's. I'm just going to go out on a limb and say it's probably not going to be as successful as Dries's side project. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't have one. And the reason is this, is that, what makes this whole thing fun is not getting a big paycheck, right? I've never met anyone who's really good at this industry who doesn't love it also, who's not creative and into it and like building stuff. So it makes you better at what you do. But also, almost every notable software project started out as a side project, as a hobby. It's almost never that a big established company says, let me form this team to build this new piece of software. And that almost never works. If it works, it's okay, but it doesn't really create something meaningful. All the good stuff comes out of side projects. Why? Because we're doing something we love. We're doing something not because someone's telling us to, not because someone is paying us to do it, not because our parents are expecting it, but because we think it's interesting. It's quirky, it's different, we just want to try it out. We're stubborn. We want to build something new. We want to push things forward in some way that doesn't exist. So anyway, I encourage you in all your efforts to create as many side projects as you can and keep them brewing. You never know. Maybe one of them will become a Drupal. But even if not, you'll become a Dries in the process. Okay, so last one I want to do, well, almost last one, is about community. What's everybody's favorite framework? Let's say maybe it's Drupal, but what other ones? Nope. What's that? Node.js isn't a framework, really. It's a language. Express is a framework or something, but Rails? Yeah. Zend. Anyone else? Huh? CodeIgniter. .NET's not a framework either. It's a mistake. Sorry. WordPress? Django? Django I like, yeah. I like all of those. I like all of those better than Drupal, actually. Maybe, I don't know. There was a framework that I really liked back in the day in 2002, 2003. It's called Seagull. Anyone ever use Seagull? Really? People heard of it? You did. Well, yeah, I told you about it. Yeah. Anyone else? No? You just wanted to? So Seagull was a PHP framework, and this was back in the days where things were still shaking out. I think now we have more consolidation. There's a few frameworks people care about. Back then, everyone had a framework, constantly. Like the Node and community is right now. Standards kept being reinvented every 2 months and all that stuff. So Seagull was based on Pair. Pair is a standard library for PHP extensions. It was pure object-oriented. It had design patterns. It had an ORM. It was just built the right way, according to me, right? It had decent configuration management and change management. The guy who ran it was kind of a dick. Sorry, I don't know a better word for him, but he was okay, and there was a little bit of a community. But that was pretty much it. And it was great code, you know, and I loved it. And I built a couple of really large sites on it. Well, at the time, for me, really large. And that was what I thought was good programming. It was all object-oriented, it was all clean, it all used design patterns. I tried to leave, after this couple of these projects, I tried to leave software. I've done it a few times. I moved to Berkeley, California from Delhi, and I was looking for a job with an NGO, the nonprofit. So I went out to Craigslist, which is a popular website, and I was looking through the NGO section, and I saw a company called Civic Actions. Anyone heard of Civic Actions? A few of you? Yeah, Civic Actions at one time was the largest Drupal company in the world. And Civic Actions built websites for nonprofits. So that was pretty much the business. I thought, okay, well, that's cool. That's some of what I want to do and some of what will pay me a decent wage. So let's give it a shot. So I joined, and that's how I was introduced to Drupal. I hated Drupal. I came in, and like the first month, I said, I quit. I actually quit the first month because I thought Drupal was so bad, and I was like, how can I work in this? This is pathetic. I mean, people are using regular expressions on SQL. There's no design patterns here. It looks like someone just vomited code on the screen and just released it, right? It's absurd. You couldn't debug anything. The performance was terrible. It didn't use CSS standards. It didn't use JavaScript standards. It was all over the place. This is Drupal 4.7. So for the first year at Civic Actions, I built a couple Drupal sites, but I mostly focused on other systems that we worked with because I was just so disgusted with Drupal, and I just complained and complained. I didn't have a Drupal.org profile. I didn't contribute anything. I was not involved in the community at all. And then something happened. I've always, although I would say I'm shy by nature, I've always had a skill for talking to customers, and so they put me on the phone with customers a lot, and I did like sales engineer work, and we sold a project for Amnesty International. How many of you know Amnesty? A few? Okay. Cool. Amnesty International is one of the largest NGOs in the world. They do human rights advocacy work, and it was a big deal. I was really proud to be working on it. I was really excited. I led a team of 8 engineers building a site in Drupal over the course of 9 months. It was probably one of the top 3 Drupal websites built that year. It was the first website in Drupal, major website, to use Arabic right-to-left theming. We did alfresco integration for the first time, Google Search Appliance integration. We built a media manager, asset management system. We did major improvements to workflow. So we worked on a lot of stuff. And in the process, I had to work with a lot of people because to get your job done in Drupal, you have to know people. You have to work with them. And I still hated the software, but I started to love the people I worked with. I made friends with them, and I learned. They criticized me. I criticized them. They saw my code. They gave me feedback. I wasn't as good as I thought I was, and they weren't as bad as I thought they were. We were all just working on it together and cobbling it together. And somehow, now I look at my profile page. I've been a member for 7 years and 8 months now on Drupal.org. And I've seen massive things change. The code's a lot better. It's actually quite good now. But what's more important is that the community is the strongest part. So if you look on, we compete with a product called Adobe CQ. Anyone know Adobe CQ? Not very few of you have heard of it. Enterprise software, very expensive, $300,000 license. If you go on LinkedIn and you search for Adobe CQ, guess how many developers you find? You know? About 8,000. If you search for Drupal, 150,000. Now, for a business owner making a decision, that's a huge distinction, right? They're like, well, Drupal's going to be around for a long time. There's a huge community around it. That community breeds innovation. Different people in different parts of the world with different problems, solving them and contributing back together is only possible through a broad community. And through this lesson, I learned that community is way more important than technology. I hate PHP. I used to. I thought it was terrible. A lot of people now are like, PHP sucks. Look, 95% of languages are the same. And 95% of frameworks are the same. But 95% of communities are not the same. And this is where we have something actually very, very special. The thing that I learned is that code is easier to change than culture. Right? It's much easier to change, to improve an API than it is to fix a culture. And this is where Drupal has succeeded and will continue to succeed in the future. And I advise you, as you go forward, to make sure that whatever you're doing, whatever companies you work for, languages you work in, that you consider around, do you want to work with these people? Is it fun to hang out with them? Because I think that ends up being more important than the actual code you're writing. And the last bit of gyan is some caution. Don't do this. Don't be that person who works 14 hours a day. Don't be that person who's just constantly on your computer. Find time to balance your life. I didn't do this for a long time, and it's very hard to be good at your job if you're an insufferable jerk who's like burnt out and working all the time. So whatever it is, find some hobbies, get to the gym, meet some people, do your thing. But it's important that you get out and have something else other than computers in your life. So with that, I'm going to close. So hopefully some gyan was helpful or entertaining at least. And let me know if you'd like to talk. A couple things I'd like to say about Acquia, if I may briefly. We are hiring in India, so if you're interested in working with me, get in touch. I don't know if, let's see, which one of these? The caution one's a little, I caution you, we work hard. It is a great community. It's very creative. You will probably build confidence. And so if you're curious, come talk to me. Also wanted to mention that we released a certification recently, a couple weeks ago. So if you're interested in being Acquia certified, you can also get in touch with me about that, or Prasad. He helped write it. He was one of the authors of the certification. And so with that, I'll let you go. Have a great conference, and feel free to hang out anytime. You can find me on Twitter at Jacob Singh, or you can email me, jacob.singh@acquia.com. Yeah?
We have 10 minutes if you want to take questions.
Sure, yeah. Any questions? I know I just gave you a bunch of gyan. I don't know what you have questions about, but it's my name, Jacob Singh. Yeah. Yeah.
Don't you think Drupal 8 is more towards proper code design patterns?
Yeah.
It's going to put a lot of community off?
No, I don't think so. Because, like I said, that's never happened. So his question was, Drupal 8 has more design patterns in it, more standard object-oriented programming structures, and that might put a lot of the community off. I don't agree, because the code is a result of the community, in my opinion. And every version of Drupal has gotten closer and closer to becoming Java at some level. And it's never really broken. People have said it's going to break the community. It never has. So I don't see why this one would. Some people will have to learn something new. Some people won't like it and will leave. Other people will like it and will join. That's okay. Community is a dynamic thing. It's not about individuals. So I don't think so. Yeah. Yeah.
I have been using some free extension, but I don't know how to contribute a free extension plus revise the version to a paid one. Is that possible in Drupal?
Oh, well, like a paid marketplace for modules in Drupal?
Any future?
No, yeah, that's a good question. So you're saying, can you make money selling modules on Drupal? The Drupal community made a conscious decision not to encourage this through its licensing and also through how the website works, right? And there's a good reason for this. How many of you know Joomla? So when I said your favorite framework, nobody said Joomla, right? Yeah, Joomla is the number one PHP sort of CMS in India, or was anyway, for a while. And it was huge all around the world. The Joomla community, Joomla is sort of fallen apart now. It's not very popular anymore. It's going downhill. The community is kind of falling apart. And one of the reasons for that was that they did that. So they had a marketplace. So you could go and you could spend $25 on a Joomla extension to integrate Google Maps or whatever. Yeah. And the people would think that the idea was by providing a marketplace, you encourage that developer to make a better extension because they're getting paid for that extension, et cetera. But what actually ends up happening is, on Drupal, if I download the Google Maps module and it doesn't work for me, if there's a bug in it, what do? I fix it, I patch it maybe. Or maybe I just go complain on the issue queue, and enough people complain, then something happens. Yeah? Maybe I upload a patch. Maybe I say it's broken so other people know about it. And then eventually, the module maintainer will take that patch, they'll incorporate it, we might make friends, right? And then when we make friends, we build community. We build community, we'll work on other projects together and all that stuff, yeah? On the other flip side, if I spend $25 on the Joomla Google Maps module, and I have a bug in it, then what do I do? What would you do? I'd ask for a refund, right? I'd be pissed off. I'd write an angry email to the guy. I'd file a support request. I wouldn't patch it. I'm not going to work for you. I paid you, right? So that's the difference. That's what ended up happening with the Joomla. You went from having a culture of collaborators to a culture of consumers, people who are buying software. And that doesn't create the same kind of innovation and community strength. That's primarily the reason why the community has shunned paid code, paid modules.
It's not exactly paid code, right? If it's a free and with optional things that are added on with the price, something like even Mollum does. So
Yeah.
the basic thing is free. But
Yeah.
if you take a higher plan, that's pricing, right? That's something that could still work in Drupal modules.
Potentially, but you still run into the same problem. I mean, no, what's happened now is the open source world has moved to a few different business models. There's SaaS, there's PaaS, and there's support, basically. So with a SaaS model, like Mollum is a SaaS product, right? It's a content filter. It catches profanity, it catches spam. And so it's hosted on a bunch of servers that does actual processing, and that's its own custom proprietary closed source code. But the add-ons for Drupal or WordPress or whatever else are open source. But that's not the same thing as charging for the Drupal code, the GPL code.